Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our kickoff session of the 2023 Automation Hour series. We are so excited to be here to have you join us, and we have a lot of great content that we are putting out this year that we are very excited about. So a few things first, as always, some housekeeping. We do have all of the lines muted. However, we would love your participation and interaction. So please post your questions either in the Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community group or here in the question widget in GoToMeeting. We are recording this session, so anything I say can be held against me in the future. And we will post those to our YouTube channel after the sessions. Also, we invite you to connect with us wherever makes the most sense for you. So we are on the Trailblazer community. We also have our website and are active on Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube as well. So for 2023, we've got a lot of great content. We're changing things up a little bit. We're going bootcamp style. So we are working on putting together a great lineup of presenters. We're going to cover everything soup to nuts when it comes to learning flows. Everything from, how do I get started and what should I be automating, to what is Flow Builder, what is a variable, how do I use all of these things to build flows, even through best practices and strategies for migration from your workflow rules and processes you may currently be using over to Flow. So this should be a fantastic year. I am so excited for the content that we are getting ready to bring to all of you. So you can register for each session, so attend as few or as many as you like at our automationhour.com website. And as always, we want to say thank you to our sponsors. We can't afford to bring this to you at no cost without their support, so we want to give them a shout out. First, who's been with us from the very beginning of Automation Hour, Concrete.io. Also, Sumer Scheduler has become a recent sponsor, and we want to say thank you to them. And of course, ActiveCampaign, who helps us send out those reminder emails to y'all so that you will come and join our fantastic webinars every other week. So as always, your co-hosts are myself, Michelle Hansen, as well as Rakesh Gupta, MVP, who's also on the line today. But we're here for the fun content, so I am actually going to pass it over to our wonderful and amazing guest presenter for the day, Ms. Diana Jaffe. So Diana, I am going to pass you presenter privileges.
All right.
And let you kick it off. Thanks so much for giving us your time today to present this.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. As Michelle said, it was a very lovely intro. I'm Diana Jaffe. I am one of many product managers at Salesforce working on flow and automation. So I feel really honored to come talk to you today about the overall state of automation at Salesforce, a little bit about getting started, and also about where we're going next. So I'm going to jump right into it. Let me get my screen focused. I can actually move a slide. As always, make all purchasing decisions based on products and services that are currently available. We do want to be transparent about direction and where we're going, but that means we need to make it clear that all purchasing decisions should be made. Guessing most of you have seen this slide before. So I want to start out with thank you. This is something we do a lot at Salesforce, but I have to say, in the last few weeks, this has really hit home for me. Talking to our customers and our partners and the folks using our products is really the best part of my job, what gets us going in the morning. And I was also thinking about this because talking about the state of automation at Salesforce, and I was thinking about how important the Flow community is to the success of automation at Salesforce. So a lot of times what we're building with Flow or with any tool is sort of a toolbox, right? We're giving you kind of a set of tools, and these tools can be used to build so many different things. A lot of what we're trying to do is make them as general purpose as possible, but there's a little bit of a balance there because it can be kind of overwhelming to get a giant toolkit if you've never used a screwdriver or a hammer before to get all of those things at one place, and you're just trying to figure out how to fix your bookcase, let's say. And I think that's where the community has been so powerful, because there's so many folks out there who are just like you, who might be starting from scratch, not knowing what tool to pick up or how to use it or how to sort of apply it to a real world problem. And that's where the incredible kind of Salesforce Trailblazer community comes in to say, I've been here before, I know where to get started, let me tell you what worked for me. And then we on the product team take that as inputs to make sure that as we built these more general purpose tools, that we're using your real world use cases. So it really works as kind of a whole symbiotic collective, but it's one of the things that I really wanted to shout out, especially because I'm here on Automation Hour. That's just one example of the community and the resources that are out there. Michelle and Rakesh told me what they have planned for the boot camp this year. I'm so excited because I think as much as we want to invest in empowering all trailblazers, there's really nothing like someone who's been there and sharing their real world experiences. So super grateful coming into the new year for all of you, whether you're a Flownatic tuning in or you're just getting started building your first record triggered flow. Welcome. So now let's go big picture. Let's talk about automation, kind of the wider market space. So in speaking with over 2,000 business decision makers around the world, they're basically all talking about automation. I think we can round up when we're above 90% to say that really what they're thinking about is how do they connect these experiences together? How do they make things more productive, make their employees spend more time on important tasks and less time on rote or administrative kind of tasks, and just improving that overall efficiency. So we really hear about automation from just about every business that we speak to, and it's become a really critical priority for everyone to meet their customer needs and continue to grow in this new digital environment. And we are seeing a lot of amazing success with this already. So when we talk to our customers, they have found really impactful ways to use things like automation to reduce their costs, optimize their processes, and increase their ROI. So by bringing together all of these different connective things, they're able to drive business efficiency across the entire business. So if you think about kind of a role in your company, head of sales, head of service, how many hours could they save if they were able to streamline deal approvals? How many service outages could they deal with in a more automated fashion so that they could communicate with them, with their customers about them and get them resolved faster? We also think about cost savings across internal business processes like onboarding new clients or approving things. And our customers across a lot of different industries, banking, communication, are all doing this today. But we know that that's a really beautiful, happy, rosy picture, but that's not always the reality for a lot of us. The reality is that automation is a great idea in theory, but there's a lot of challenges to actually implementing it and getting it met for all of these different business needs. A lot of our developers are facing burnout. We have overburdened teams that have a giant queue of things. Yes, we'd love to build beautiful automated solutions, but we just have a lot of things to do. And then that leads to a disconnect between your business stakeholders and their demands and expectations and what you're actually able to deliver. So how do we address this? Well, that's what we're thinking about at Salesforce, is what does the ideal solution look like for automation kind of across all of these different things? What are the characteristics of an automation solution that really make it valuable in this very challenging world where we have a ton of demand and limited resources? What can we do? Well, that comes with creating a collaborative solution that brings together both business and IT and lets the business teams use easy to use or no code tools using pre-built solutions to focus on the business side, while allowing IT to focus more on things like governance and also on creating more composable building blocks that they can give to their business team in a scalable way without increasing cost and actually decreasing cost over time. So this is really, I would say, the overall vision of where we want to go. And you'll see that in some of the different investments we're making with Salesforce Flow. It's kind of to complete this overall picture. So that's where Salesforce Flow comes in. The goal of Salesforce Flow is to enable every trailblazer to transform their business and improve their efficiency. So we start with thinking about how to orchestrate these end-to-end mission critical processes to fast track those human interactions with the systems that back them. And so then that brings us into the systems. There are a ton of systems everywhere. We'd love it if everything was perfectly in Salesforce, but it's really in a lot of different places. Some of them are custom, some might be legacy, some are very modern and new in the cloud. So how do we automate and bring all of those together? And then how do we enable interactive, iterative workflows? So we want to give our employees, our consumers, our partners, everyone the ability to interact with these real-time processes and automation, and we want to make sure that we can iterate on them as they go. So we can take their feedback, we can make them better, they can be dynamic and adjust to your business as the business changes. So Salesforce Flow goal is to help you build scalable processes that empower people to take action faster, which gives you efficiency and cost savings. So let's take a look at what this looks like under the hood. There is a lot that goes into this. This is not everything. This is the simplified diagram of all the different pieces, but I think it gives you a good picture of how we think about automation as a whole and kind of all the different inputs and pieces that are coming into play. So we have at the top our engagement layer. So there's a lot of different ways that your business processes might want to engage with users. You might want to use Omni Studio to use pixel perfect, beautiful customer experiences. You might want to use screen flows to really quickly build out quick experiences for your internal users to work through a process that requires some amount of interaction. We also have smart interactions like Einstein bots and next best action to automate it even more fully, as well as an entire multi-channel strategy. Underneath that, we talk a lot about how we can give you more pre-built assets. I talked a little at the beginning about our automation community being a great place to say, here, let me help you get started. And I think that's a great resource, especially for if you're a solo admin out there, you know, you're on your own trying to get it together. We're also, as a company, investing a lot in industry verticals. So thinking about how a specific industry like healthcare is going to use objects and automation and all of that together. So we have a lot of pre-built content out there to try to get you to use these reusable building blocks and scale even faster. And underneath that is a ton of power in our process automation layer. So that includes orchestration, that includes flow builder, and that also includes invocable actions that can encapsulate code, as well as can encapsulate callouts to different services, whether you're doing that via coding, via MuleSoft, via some of our other low-code tools, so you can kind of connect to the outside world. Layered around that is, as always, governance and monitoring. We know how important it is not just to be able to build quickly and innovate, but also make sure that you're doing it in a secure way and that it's well monitored. And on the other side, I think the new frontier is really about this sort of large collection of real-time data and how we can infuse real-time data, customer data platform with Genie, as well as analytics with Tableau into this entire experience to make sure that our automation is as data rich and as optimized analytically as possible. So this is awesome. I think it's a great kind of overview of all of the things, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming. So let's take a real world customer experience and dive into what this might look like for a specific business process. So here we have an order update process. Before we transformed the end-to-end experience, it was really fragmented. So customer calls in, they get put on hold while a rep is trying to grab their information from 4 or 5 different systems. Then that rep has to go through, get approvals for those systems, which are each a little different. They have to call in their manager to get something changed, and then they have to go into a legacy system to actually update the shipping address or whatever it is, manage the inventory, make sure everything gets coordinated before finally then going back, either taking the customer off hold or having to send them a follow-up email to let them know the status of the change to their order. With Salesforce Flow, we can automate so much of this process. So let's start with Einstein bots. They can go into a chat window, have an experience with the Einstein bots, and maybe identify a really common pattern that we already have for order updates, so we can just put them right into the flow before they talk to a customer support person. They're able to do it self-service. Next, we go in and we use Orchestrator to kind of combine all of these things together. And in these different pieces, we can use MuleSoft Composer to take triggers from those external systems, maybe SAP, NetSuite, some of those different things that you have stuff information, to bring it into Salesforce, where you can then orchestrate and coordinate it using Flow Builder. If you need to get your manager's approval, that can be automatically sent and reviewed in Slack, and we can put in a whole screen flow that lets you maybe make some selections or do a richer review. And then at the end of it, if we have to go into a really legacy system that doesn't even have an API, you can use MuleSoft RPA to go in and still automate and access those systems without a human having to intervene. So that was a way to take a really complex interrupt-driven process and automate it to increase time to value and also increase customer satisfaction, because Tony here is going to get an experience that is faster, that is self-service, and that is delivered automatically to him. But as mentioned, a lot of this can be complicated or daunting to start out with looking at from scratch. We have a powerful toolbox, and what we want to do is show you the way is take these industry experts across a variety of different verticals and give you pre-built solutions to get started. So you have kind of a baseline to start, and then you can use all of our configurable tools to add in the secret sauce of your specific company. So there's a ton of options out there. There's 900 or more of them. I don't know all of them, but this is definitely the kind of thing that if you're interested, I would recommend reaching out to your account executive. They're going to be the one that's going to be able to connect you to some of these different solutions. It depends a little bit on your industry. But there's a ton there. I will say we're investing a lot in this still. I was just talking to some folks who are working on improving their specific packages for these just yesterday. So this is something we're continuing to invest in quite a lot going forward. And that was a lot of kind of hypothetical slides, but there are some real world success stories behind this. So Autodesk, which does a lot in 3D design and engineering, has been a Salesforce customer for over 10 years. And they really wanted to deliver better for their customer success team because they wanted their reps to be able to focus on the conversations with their customers, on the outcomes, and share that data with sales and success teams more broadly as well. And they used a lot of low-code things. They used Flow, App Builder, Dynamic Forms to build really beautiful pages. And then they were also able to iterate on those things quickly. So they were able to get feedback from their customer success representatives to be part of the solution and improve the adoption of them. So with that low-code kind of capability, they're able to iterate and make sure that the process actually suits their customer success guides rather than kind of having to force it through and then it taking a long time to iterate on. All of this was done in less than 4 months, and they were able to enable more than 500 representatives and reduce their ongoing maintenance using our low-code tools. So that, I think, is the overall view of where we see automation headed. You can kind of get a sense, I think, when you hear about a different solution that Salesforce Flow is offering, something like RPA. Hopefully this gives you that wider lens to think about what we're talking about when we start talking about automation or why you'll see different new things coming out. This is, I think, the broader context. But I also know not everyone can be thinking globally all the time. And so I also want to talk about where I think you can get started and why I'm so excited about Automation Hour doing an entire sort of boot camp on flow. I'm also biased because I am a flow builder PM, so it's where I think everyone should be working, but I'll also say that it is, I think, a really great place to get started if you're a little bit overwhelmed by a broader automation solution. And that's really because Flow Builder is the heart and soul of automation at Salesforce. So a lot of these different things are layered on top of the core around Flow Builder. And Flow Builder has a couple key principles that are why it is, I think, the core of what we do and why we see so many of these different solutions wanting to come in and connect and orchestrate through Flow. So we've already talked about some of those pre-built templates. One of the great things is that you can build guided interactive forms. So you can think about automation in both human interactions where decisions need to be made and back-end processes. These aren't separate in Flow Builder. These are just sort of two pieces of an overall automation puzzle. You can also turn a lot of your automation either in code or even already low code in Flow into reusable building blocks. So different teams can reuse the same piece of automation and embed it in a lot of different places. Underlying all of this is a lot of systems. Every customer I've talked to struggles with all of the different systems that they're working with at their company. And so by presenting sort of a unified layer that connects in, whether it's MuleSoft, it's RPA, it's an external service, all of that can come into Flow, and then Flow can handle the transfer of information between them. And Flow is really built to be deployed anywhere. You can call it via an API. You can put it on the web, you can put it inside your Salesforce application, you can put it on mobile, and you can even now call it in Slack as of the spring release. So there is a ton of places out there where you can connect Flow to bring people in and have your automation meet people where they are. So this is where I normally do a very large demo. My org was having some challenges this morning, so we couldn't quite get the demo together for you. I will share out a link at the end. I did this demo at Automation Dreaming, which was sort of a online session. So I'll share that out afterwards, and I'm going to show a video of kind of a different demo that we've done in the past. So you'll see a little bit more about how I would actually build out one of these solutions in Flow. So I'm still going to switch to it, but if you want kind of the bigger picture of how some of these things are orchestrated together, you can also check out the recording. So let's take a look at this. So we have, I work for a company and can kind of put on different hats. I'm going to put on the hat of hiring manager. And we have been trying to improve our onboarding process at our company, Brightbank, in order to get employees working faster and up to speed more quickly. So I'm the hiring manager, Kat. We have a new applicant, Erickson, that's coming in. And I'm going to go ahead and confirm his start date. So Erickson has accepted his offer. We're going to put in his start date. And we have in the background a triggered flow that is going to take this information and set off a process. So it's going to say, okay, now we know that Erickson is starting in the next 2 weeks, and we're going to send him an email. So this email got sent behind the screens. Now, putting on my Eric hat, I've just gotten an email from my new employer saying, hey, we want to get your computer started before you actually get here so you can get working on the first day. And it'll take me to a portal that's embedded in our Experience Community Cloud that's going to let Eric go in and make any changes he wants. So he doesn't like to go by Erickson. He goes by Eric. He changes his first name. He can also go in and pick what kind of computer he wants. Now that we're work from anywhere, he's going to go ahead and pick a laptop, and you'll see options pop up that he can then select. After that has happened, now I'll put on my IT hat. So IT provisioning just automatically received a request from Slack to say, okay, Eric needs a MacBook. Can you go ahead and get that started? So now my third hat as the IT person is able to go and make sure that we can get him his MacBook by his start date that Kat gave us as well. So we have our needs by date from Kat, as well as the details from Eric about his preference. So let's see how I was able to build this behind the screens. So first, I go ahead and access our applicant record by doing a get records of that object that gets passed in. And then I'm going to go ahead and build a screen flow. So this is going to be a visual way. We're going to see how I built that screen that Eric saw that let him pick his MacBook and also review any of his starting information. So there's a lot of fields I can do, but one of the things we've added recently is the ability to do a dynamic form for flow. And so this lets me input that variable that I already got, so that applicant, Eric, and then I can go in and I get all of the fields that are already on the applicant. And I can just drag and drop them into the screen, and I'm going to get all of the information about that from the object directly imported in. So first name is a required field. It's already going to be required on my screen flow. I don't need to connect the dots on those logic. I'm going to go in, drag in a lot of the other screens we need, information like start date and phone number, all of which will be formatted for date fields, formatted for phone number fields automatically just by dragging them in. I'm now going to use a component to have them select different choices between desktop and laptop and between a MacBook and a PC. So all of that, if you're a longtime screen flow user, you'll know this has been a little challenging in the past. We've done a lot to make it simpler to build out choices. And one of the neat things we can do is conditional field visibility. So we don't want the laptop to show up, the options for laptop to show up unless Eric selected that radio button laptop. So that's what I'm able to do here. So laptop types will only show up if laptop is selected in the radio button. Now we're going to get in and look at what it is to format this. So that was a lot of different fields, but if I'm on a wide screen, it's going to be really daunting to use. And we're now able to use things like display text as well as section and headers to lay things out. This is going a little faster than my talk track. Lastly, we just gathered all of that information and updates from Eric. So anything he changed about his personal information, all I have to do is do a single get record or update records on that same applicant, hit done, and now we've taken any information that he's done and updated it. Lastly, we need to create that IT provisioning request. So we're going to create a new custom record on our custom object for IT provisioning. And we can use formulas to fill out kind of the title and name and things like that. So we can create a really nice record with all of the different information from Eric passed in directly. Last but not least, we want to send that Slack message over. So we're going to go ahead and use our out-of-the-box Slack action to send that to the IT provisioning Slack group. And we're going to be able to save it, activate it, and with a very quick little demo, we're able to get that whole experience out directly to our end users. So that was a quick run through of just some of the things you can do. As you saw, we used record manipulation of different records in the system, custom objects that came in, as well as building out a screen for an interactive element. That screen can be embedded either in Salesforce, but also in an external website like Experience Cloud. And then you saw us update records, create new records, and finally use our invocable actions framework, which can send a variety of notifications or do different operations, in this case using our out-of-the-box integration with Slack to send a message to our IT provisioning department and make sure we can get Eric's laptop to him before he even shows up on the first day. So that was a little quick tour through what it's like to actually build a flow in Flow Builder when you get started. Next up, I like to call this the choose your own adventure slide. That's not an official Salesforce title, but that's what I always call it. Because I think Flow Builder has value to pretty much every customer. As I showed at the beginning, more than 90% of businesses are thinking about automation right now. But Salesforce has this broader, wider offering. And so that's where I would say to really think about your org, think about your business, and think about what your problems are. Because we probably have a solution that matches them, but it's really about finding a match for them. It can be overwhelming to try to use all of these out of the gate, but I think by starting with Flow Builder, then you can opt in and add in these things as you adopt them into your organization. So maybe you built out some things in Flow Builder, but you're really struggling with cross business processes, cross department, and with processes that are taking a lot longer. So not just a quick IT provision, but maybe something that's going to take a few weeks to get out a content management process, something like that. That's where you could go and start exploring flow orchestration and the wider things that can give you, like work guides and parallel processing. Maybe you're really struggling with connecting to external systems, or you have a lot invested in MuleSoft. Connecting those dots with Flow can be really powerful. You can bring in things like Flow RPA if you have a lot of legacy systems and what you're really struggling with is that side of things. Maybe you're a data nerd. One of the new things we have now is Tableau can launch a flow directly. So again, you can launch the same flow from a website, from an API, from Tableau. All of those different things are connected together all through Flow. So this is where I would always say, start with your business processes and your problems first, prioritize where you think there can be the most value, and then look at this wider Salesforce Flow library of options and opportunities, and you can definitely find something that I think will match it depending on what it is. So the questions we always get asked are, what are you doing next? What are you working on? And what are you building? So Flow Builder has a lot. You just saw me build out a process very quickly, but there is more to come. So one of the things I think we're always thinking about is not just the power of what Flow Builder can enable, but also the experience for those who are building the flows. Because the more we can empower you as builders, the more you can then empower your business. So in last year, we released low code testing because we really want to think not just about the build experience, but the entire life cycle of your automation. How is it going to hold up in 6 months? How is it going to hold up in a year? Have you thought through some of the different ways that it can be used, ways it can go wrong? All of that sort of debugging and testing is a big area of interest for us. We also think a lot about the usability of the actual Flow Builder application itself. So we're working on making things like identifying and picking resources smarter and simpler. And we're also thinking about different ways that you can draft a flow. So you can kind of sketch things out, not have things fully complete or validated, but still save it and make it sort of an interactive working product. Another, I would say, category that we're investing in is on our ScreenFlow roadmap. So one of the things, I would say, one of the trends we've seen is the data that's coming in and the data that folks want to manipulate and automate is getting more and more complex, and we need Flow Builder to match that complexity. So if you've tried out the spring 23 release or tried out the beta in winter 23, we've added in an out-of-the-box data table component to show more data tables. And we're also working a lot more on things like repeating sections, so you can show sort of complex sets of data, not even just in a data table, but in different kind of customizable pieces. We're also thinking a lot about actions and reactivity. So when you get more complex information, you don't necessarily want to just throw it all at your users. And so by making screen flows more dynamic, more reactive, you saw in the demo that was able to show those radio buttons based on, one set of radio button selections based on another. We want to superpower that kind of thing where different components can react to on-screen changes, can react to actual flows that run, all without the screen needing to be refreshed or the user having to do anything. So you can create kind of really rich, dynamic, interactive experiences to calculate things, calculate sales tax, I think is what we have demonstrated here based on a shipping address. So all of that is in the works. There is a beta for some of this available in spring 23. And lastly, connecting flow to the wide world. You saw me talk a lot about MuleSoft, about RPA, all of these things. We're also investing in this inside of Flow. So one of the things we're working on that is, I forgot to tag it, but it's also in beta in spring 23 is our easy HTTP callouts. So you can go in directly into Flow and with no code, configure a callout to an external service, which is really exciting. We're also coming up thinking about data transformation. As I said, data gets more complex when we start having data coming in from more external systems, thinking about how we can transform that data and kind of mutate it into something that works well with Flow, or some of the different ways we model objects in Flow is something that we're investing in going forward. And we think about extending Flow both sort of down on the system integration level, but also at the engagement level. And that's where you'll see Flow in Slack, which has been released in the spring 23. It's been in beta for a little bit. It's now GA. So you can build a simplified version of your screen flow to render directly in Slack. So you can do things like go through what we saw Eric go through, but have that embedded in your Slack experience. So that was kind of a mad tear of information. If you have general questions about Flow, these are some great resources to check out on just getting started. Trailhead is always a great place to learn, as well as, of course, Automation Hour and everything Michelle and Rakesh have lined up. I also want to shout out a couple things that are coming up imminently in the next few weeks if you're interested. So one of the things that I think actually came about from a Twitter conversation on this topic, but one of the things we've heard and that I work on all the time is getting new users into Flow, specifically if they've been migrating from workflow rules or process builder. Rebecca was one such admin. She was pretty intimidated, I think, by Flow initially, and she was able to use a lot of the community resources out there to learn and train up. She used our workflow migration tool, and she's able to move into Flow, and now she's kind of a Flownatic. So she's going to be telling her story on one of our automation webinar channels. There's monthly updates here, so there's also on YouTube a lot of these kind of in the can, but we bring in real life admins to share their experiences and share what they've learned directly with you. So that I think is a really great one if you're a little nervous or want to know how to get started with Flow. I saw a preview of this and it's great. If you are a kind of Flownatic and you want to know what's coming, what's next, what's out, we have our Flow Release Readiness Live. I'll also be on the Admin Release Readiness Live to give a quick preview, but if you want all the details, we have a Flow specific RRL on January 25th, where you can see that new HTTP callout in action. You can see screen flow enhancements and everything. So definitely two things to check out, as well as the more general resources that are available out there. And with that, I think we can go to questions if we have any.
Oh, Diana, of course we have questions.
Do we have questions, Michelle?
We have questions. This is why I love our audience. All right, so we're going to start back at the top. So right. Pavel, you said something that Pavel perked up his ears and said, wait, what? I don't know anything about this. pre-built customizable templates? Is there something out there or something coming?
There is a workflow library available. Again, it's so for those you have to talk to your account executive. I think it depends on your licenses, what's available. We also always have the App Exchange, which has a ton of stuff built by community partners. We did a labs day last year. So some internal Salesforce employees who work with customers went and built in some common things that they've done. So there's some really cool stuff in the App Exchange if you just want something small to get started. If you want the broader kind of full solution, then look into our workflow library. There's websites on that that we can pass along as resources.
Okay. All right, so this may also answer Tim's question, was where's a good place to find pre-made templates for Flow? So it sounds like App Exchange, or talk to your AV about that workflow library.
Actually there's 3 now that I think about it. So I would say, yeah, if you want kind of an industry specific vertical, the sort of workflow library thing, look for Salesforce workflow library. It might have been renamed Automation Packs really recently, so don't quote me if I get the name wrong. But there is a set of solutions out there that, again, talk to your AE. If you want something that's a little more just install in your sandbox org and get started, the App Exchange has a bunch of stuff. So they're both partner built solutions out there that may be paid or not. And also our Salesforce Labs is internal employees who release kind of experimental solutions out there. And I know last year we did an initiative to ask our employees to come up with things. And we had some folks who, were services, professional services on Service Cloud that built kind of like the 3 most common flows that I do when I get started on a Service Cloud implementation. So there's some really cool stuff there. And then lastly, I think I would say more on things like invocable action components. Unofficial SF is a great resource. There's a huge kind of open source community out there of folks who've built kind of utilities or different things. Those are less going to be templates. I don't think there's a lot of templates on there, but there's a lot of things like invocable actions that you can install to do something more quickly or figure out how to do an action. Honestly, some of their stuff is inspired some of our things like the data table component. So that's a great place to see kind of new ideas or things that are coming from the community as well.
Absolutely. All right. So Mark Jones, hi Mark. I know it's so late over in England, so I'm glad you're joining us. So I know the spring release webinar is due in the next week or so, but he wants to know, Diana,
yes,
what is your favorite update to Flow in the upcoming release? And you're only allowed to pick one.
Okay, well I do have 2 that I'm presenting on, but I will pick one. It is the 2000 element limit being removed. It is, I forget what the actual error message is that always shows up, like transaction element exceeded or something like that. That is one that has been on my list for a long time, ever since I first started at Salesforce, talked to admins, heard about that limit, talked to our engineers. That limit has a long history, but was a little out of date. No engineer was really defending it. They were just kind of saying, well, we got to make sure you can't infinitely loop, was honestly why it was originally put in there. And so there was a lot of work by different groups to make sure we had all the limits in place and getting various approvals to get a limit removed. So that was a really satisfying one for me. I know it's not sort of the newest feature, but in terms of hearing admins, hearing their challenges and getting a change through, that one is very close to my heart.
Awesome. Okay, so next question comes from Julia Chin. Are there any plans to add UI experience components to Flow that are out of the box, such as a refresh component at the end of a flow, for example?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Adam White is our ScreenFlow guru, and he's going to be on that Flow Release Readiness Live. So if you want to re-ask that question to him, I know specifically around things like refresh, we're focused right now on reactivity and making it so you don't have to do kind of in component by component refreshes and things. So I think that's more of our focus, but that might be part of his overall vision, and it's just not what I've heard about. So
Perfect. Great. So next question from Andrew Russo. What about the ability to add errors in Flow, kind of like you can with the add error in Apex?
we would love to get to that. We've definitely heard that. I would say that's a great one to vote up on the idea exchange, because that's one I hear anecdotally from a lot of folks, but when we can get some data and numbers behind it, that helps us get it prioritized. So yes, it's something we absolutely want to do. I don't have a time frame, just because there's a lot of things we want to do. And but yeah, it's definitely on the wish list for both me and Henry Liu, who's another product manager who's written multiple documents about why that would be great.
I love it. All right. Well, Alan is incredibly excited for record type support in Flow. He also comes with a question. Let's see. How about a filter on the resources tab to show just input variable or output variables? That would save me a ton of time when updating some of my legacy flows.
I love that idea. I'm going to snippet this because that has been an idea I've had in the past and I haven't had a customer tell me. It's just been my own idea. So I love that, and I'm going to use that as leverage in the future. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I will say there's a lot of things we're doing right now on making resource selection better. I talked about we're trying to redo that picker that you see everywhere. So that thing that pops up that shows you all the different things. That takes a lot of work. You would be amazed at how much depth there is to that code and all of the different use cases that you have to consider and all of that. So that has been the priority, as well as some of the Canvas stuff we've been doing that you may see come out. So I definitely think that's a great idea. Again, that's a little personal one that is on my wish list, but I do think there are some other ones that are higher priority first. So, but hopefully
well, if it's not already on the idea exchange, absolutely throw that up there, and then toss it my way. I will vote for it at the very least.
Exactly. And then I pull that in to my spec.
All right. So next, a question from Tracy Ing. Is there any update on process builder migration to Flow like there is for workflow rule to Flow?
See, I'm so glad I picked the element limit for Mark's question, because that was my other favorite feature in the Spring 23 release. I was like, I don't know which to pick. Thank you, Tracy. Yes, so in Spring 23, if you have a pre-release org, you can already see it. You can see it demoed in our release readiness, both in the admin one and the week after. So yes, we have added support for Process Builder to the Migrate to Flow tool. It's not fully complete, but I think we've covered a lot of the most common scenarios. So check it out and tell me what you think. Tell me what you think we should add. I got them both in. See, there we go.
I love it. See, this is how we set you up. And just knock them all down.
Exactly. You're setting me up to plug all my favorite things.
Absolutely. Okay, so Stu McNaught actually wanted to let Julia know there is a refresh action on unofficial SF. So
everything comes full circle. There we go. Like I said, the community is the best resource. I only know some answers. The community knows all the answers.
Yeah. All right, so Tamar has a little bit of a concern. Apparently there's no flow category on the Salesforce Idea Exchange. So is it possible for us to add that, or who would we talk to about getting that added to the Idea Exchange to be able to find and submit flow ideas more easily?
So there is one called Process Automation, and that is basically a flow one at this point. It has legacy stuff from Process Builder and Workflow Rules still in it, but what I've done is gone through at least the top item. I don't think I've gone through all of them, but the top items, and if they're Process Builder related, but they're still applicable in Flow, like there's something Flow doesn't do either, we've left them there and just are sort of assuming that they would be something we'd add into Flow. Like as an example, there was one for a long time that said outbound messages in work, in Process Builder. And we didn't put them in Process Builder, but we put them in Flow. And then we closed out that idea exchange. But yeah, that process automation one should have, that's where I look when I'm looking for Flow idea exchange things. So that's basically one-to-one with the Flow team.
Perfect. All right, so we still got a few more questions coming in. Mark is back with another one. So this is kind of random, but he's been messing around with the description bubbles that are coming in the spring 23 release, which, by the way, thank you so much for
We
that.
love that. That's another one. We're getting all the
Yeah,
favorites here.
right? Do we know, is there a visual limit for the description bubbles? He has had some instances where his descriptions are unreadable because of the length of
Oh.
that description field.
I know there is a limit on the field. I know we have a character limit on the description field. I don't know offhand if the tooltip bubble limit is different or how it looks if you test the boundaries. I can ask that. That would be Mark Delergio is also the specific PM if you want to track him
Awesome.
down. We can also try to get that answered before really starting this live.
All right, perfect. This is fun. I type way slower than you can talk, that's for sure. Okay, so Diane Hackbarth would like to know, if you are just starting with flows, should you really be converting workflow rules or process builders to flow, or should you learn more about flow first?
I think that's a good question. Well, also, I wonder, folks out there in the community, if they have thoughts on this. I just heard Rebecca talk about how she got started converting workflow rules and that got her started. So that's one example. I don't think there's a wrong answer there. I would say flow can be very overwhelming, and there is a subset that I think is easier to do if you're just learning to recreate workflow rules. So I don't know that you necessarily have to migrate, but maybe take those use cases and say, okay, I want to learn about field updates in flow. So that'll give you an opportunity to learn about before save or fast field updates, which is something flow does that doesn't do, but you're still taking that same use case from workflow rules. So you can start off with some simpler use cases like that. And then some of it is also your style. So it can be useful to just try to rebuild it from scratch in flow, even if you can use the migrate tool as a learning technique, or use trailheads, that kind of thing as well. But I would say I would not try to learn about screen flows until if you are going to be starting with having to migrate some things. I will say I still to this day, I had to come up to speed when I started on flow. I was put on triggered automation first. It took a lot longer for me to learn things about screen flows. So yeah, I think at least for my learning style, only learning enough for the next problem or two made it easier for me.
Yep, absolutely. We definitely have some comments coming in from the community. So Pavel's point of view, Salesforce made a lot of effort in making flows user-friendly. So definitely recommend starting with record triggered flows. Seems to be more approachable, a little easier. I agree with you that it's great if you know what a workflow rule or process is supposed to do. Rebuilding that from scratch in flow, where you can make sure that what one does, the other also does, is a great way to kind of learn and connect the dots.
Yeah.
Also, I generally offer to hold the hand of anybody out there trying to learn flow. So 100%, you know,
Talk to Michelle.
hit up the community and I mean, there's a degree of you need to know what you're doing in flow to be able to make it work. But hey, as long as you're doing it in a sandbox, it's not like you can really break anything anyway, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it can be fun to play or come up with things too. But yeah, there's a
All
lot of
right,
it.
we're about to put you in the hot seat.
No,
I hope
no.
you're ready. So Mart Best would like to know, should I be able to HTTP call out to my own org's REST API?
Oh, I'm going to ask Kel that question. She was just saying, I don't know what to put on our questions. I mean, I guess it would work. I would say that's a very inefficient way to do things, and I don't know. So a lot of the complication that honestly we're still working through with the beta is around authentication and named credentials, and I don't know if how that would work if named credentials supports that, which might be where you'd get tripped up. If it's a publicly available API, it should call in. Authentication is usually where those things get hard. But again, it's unlikely to be the best way to access, because when it's all internal, you're skipping a couple steps that are going to make it slower, is my guess. But
got it. All right. Wow, we've got so many questions. I'm having to scroll to find them all. So
great.
fantastic. Okay. So Mr. Singh has kind of a general question, so I'm going to let you answer this how you see fit. What are the current limitations of Flow Builder?
That's really hard. Again, I'll say that's another one the community can pile in with their, I'm sure a lot of folks on the call have their favorite limitation that bothers them. Michelle, I'm sure you have your opinions as well. I would say, I think broad strokes, some of the things that we're working on are also kind of on the limitation side. So I think we're really good at working with Salesforce data. How do we connect that to a wider universe, and what are some of the challenges of that? We're not there yet, so there's more to do there. We will never be Apex. A lot of times, you know, there's sort of a curve at which we will always be a little slower than Apex on certain things. Our goal isn't to be everything that code can do. Our goal is to be a common set of things that are easier to do and we can enable to a wider set of folks, because it would make Flow Builder so complicated that it would sort of defeat the purpose of it. So that tends to also be where there's some boundaries. I know we could be better on collections management. That's one. That there's a lot of things. And then specifically on screens, I think that reactivity piece is the piece that we know is a limitation we're trying to make better. So those are some ideas. I don't think that's a comprehensive list. That's off the top of my head. I'd be curious what other folks, if they want to chime in with comments.
Well, Mr. Russo did chime in again that add error not being available is the biggest limitation in his opinion.
There we go. So. Yeah. And again, that's one I would put in the, doesn't, just because that's not on the, we'll never do it in Flow. That's only in Apex. That's the thing we'd like to bring in eventually. But again, we're bringing in from all these different things. We have folks in Apex wanting to do more sophisticated things in Flow. We have new users who are totally overwhelmed and want Flow to be simpler. And then we also have a variety of just sort of functional areas that have things that could be better about them. So,
yeah, we've got plenty of people pouring in with their limitations. So horrible limitation in Apex, documentation. It's not easy to be able to document what a flow does inside of a flow.
That's another great point. Yeah.
So definitely we've got that.
Well, if you think like a product manager for a minute, I'm guessing not everyone came in with the same answer, right? So you can imagine what we have to do is prioritize from all valid critiques or ideas or concerns, and we can only pick so many of them to do at a time. So
100%. So I know we're at the top of the hour. We still have more questions. So Diana, can you stay with us a little longer?
I believe I can. Yes.
All right. So here is a big one that several people have asked in different flavors. What is Salesforce's flow framework best practice recommendation for record triggered flows? Is it one flow or flow type to rule them all? More granular with record entry criteria? What's our best practice at this point?
Yes, well, I have a whole presentation on that. Automate this. There is a session where we have a little showdown between a couple different trailblazers who advocate for different things. And then I also share an overall point of view. I would say we are moving away from the one flow per object to rule them all model. That's not to say that it doesn't still have its place. Unfortunately, our best practice is more nuanced than it was in the past, where it was like, this is the only way, do it this way, everything else will break. Because I think what we found from feedback is that that really broke down on a lot of use cases for a lot of customers. So we've tried to add in a lot more flexible tools like those entry conditions. Those help with performance. We've also added Flow Trigger Explorer, which helps with seeing everything and also ordering things. So you can control the order between two different flows without having to put all the automation in one place, to try to give you some more flexibility. But now the recommendation is much more like make it match your business processes, which can be a little more nebulous, which is why I think that Automate This webinar is great, because you hear from some different folks about why they chose one way or the other. And I think a lot of them are valid. It's like, I'm a solo admin. I want it all in one place because it's sort of an automatic code review every time I look at it, versus I need to silo these out. You know, I have a larger org. They need to be Apex tested, some of these other things. And so splitting it out in this way is more important. So yeah, there's a lot of different reasons why you might want to do one or the other. And so generally we try to tailor our guidance a little bit based on to what those concerns are. But I would say long-term readability broke down with the large ones. And so, and maintainability and scalability. So that's one of the things to consider that can be hard to think of up front, but can end up biting you in the long term. So that's one of the reasons why we've given you more options to split it out. But it does mean some more decision making along the way about should this be its own one or go into the same flow.
Absolutely. All right, so Marty would like to know, where's the best place to post if you get an error when converting a process to a flow?
Post on the Trailblazer community on the flow one. I forget the current name of it. I think it's automation. But a lot of and also check our documentation. So the migration doesn't do everything, and that's pretty clearly upfront. So it may be that there are some things that are not supported. So yeah, if the error message says this isn't supported at this time, that's going to be the answer. We try to post some of the how-tos for manually migrating those, because again, a lot of those can be manually migrated. I don't think our documentation is comprehensive on that topic, because we're continually adding things to flow, and that's a lot of doc to write to then throw out. Yeah, you may need to ask for help on the community if you want to get it moved over manually. If you see like a true lot error, then also you can send that to support. Yeah.
100%. All right, so I know we have a lot of other people that have popped in with some opinions. Definitely conversion, knowing flow at the beginning helps a little bit. So understand at least some basics before you go trying to convert. Again, people are saying Automation Champion has some examples to help you learn flow from scratch. Instead of using the migration tool, rebuilding them from scratch is another great way to learn, and it gives you a frame of reference to kind of connect the dots. Mm-hmm. So it looks like the last question we have in here is, are there any plans to make any enhancements to the free-form mode? For some of our more complex flows, the free-form mode works just a little better than auto layout, but it's annoying that the arrows do what they want.
Yeah, there are not plans to continue to invest in freeform. So one of the, there's a lot of reasons why we did auto layout. One of them, as an example, is accessibility that we don't always think about, but that one is more accessible. So, and that is where we're investing going forward. So there will be some things that are added only to auto layout, and there isn't a high priority to add them to freeform in the near term.
That makes sense, and also makes me sad at the same time, because I do love me some freeform mode some days.
I fully understand finite time and resources.
Yep, I totally get it.
Canvases is a lot of engineering effort, so we have to kind of balance that.
Totally get it. Fantastic. Well, I know we're over, but Diana, thanks so much for hanging in with us.
Thank you all so much for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming.
If you didn't get your questions answered, I think the flow URL, there'll be more PMs than just me on there, so we can spread the questions out. Also, the admin URL for the wider picture.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of our attendees. Great discussion today. So we will see you in 2 weeks on our next session of Automation Hour. And Diana, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.